Hey, what is going, Nostalgics? It's Ryan from the Nostalgia Factor here, back again with another Nostalgic Blast review, where we take a look at the best and worst in gaming. Now, today's video is going to be on a game that isn't so much an old game, but it's a retro-style game, and arguably one of the most successful indie games of all time, backed by good old Kickstarter, Shovelknight. Starting in 2014 as a Kickstarter project, Shovelknight was released to the world by Yacht Club Games, a small up-and-coming studio that wasn't too unfamiliar to the world of gaming, but up until Shovelknight, they didn't really have any major hit titles that people really remembered. Of course, since the explosion that is Shovelknight, Shovelknight has cameoed in multiple games, has a collection of side games coming out, and even has its own direct sequel, Shovelknight Dig, coming out, I believe in either late 2020 or early 2021. So Shovelknight has earned its place in gaming, especially in indie games. Games that replicate old games from the Nintendo 64 era, Super Nintendo, so on and so forth. Now, the version that I played for today's video was the Xbox One version, or the Shovelknight Treasure Trove. Now, Shovelknight Treasure Trove isn't really anything that will interfere with the video itself, because there is the standard game which I played that was part of the 2014 launch, but there's also side games and DLCs, and there's some other cool stuff on this thing. However, I will just be reviewing the base game as when it came out, and we'll be focusing on the main campaign covering the tutorial character Shovelknight himself. Honestly, what can I really say that hasn't been said already about Shovelknight? Every single review I've ever seen here on YouTube is just filled with praise for the game, saying that it's almost completely perfect, a really amazing replication, yet original idea of games of old applied into a new modern media. And honestly, I agree with all that. Shovelknight has some of the best visuals that I've seen of a game this year in 2020. I played the game a little while back. Shovelknight's visuals look so amazing, from the age-old Super Nintendo games brought to a world of modern gaming. The environments look sleek, Shovelknight's movements look so fluid for the time, the designs of each of the unique characters and boss knights you face off in this game are absolutely amazing. The lighting effects that I mentioned from Devil May Cry are prevalent here, and the darkened areas, where you go on the underground chase through the water levels and whatnot, being chased by a giant piranha, lighting up the way. The effects in this game are so beautiful for the time. Yacht Club Games, for one of their first AAA titles, arguably, backed with Kickstarter, made the graphics of this game not only pop from an olden era perspective, but brought to a new age of media. Shovelknight looks amazing, and controls amazingly too. Shovelknight's controls are so amazing and beautifully to execute. Shovelknight has a wide variety of abilities that he can use, such as his shovel jump and his slash, and just a wide variety of shovel-based abilities. I don't want this video going for too long, but I do want to give my thoughts on the game, just to kind of surmise that. But Shovelknight, his wide variety of abilities, very beautifully to execute. Every movement, every jump, every single time that you bash an enemy's head taking down a boss or a common foe is completely satisfying. Shovelknight has some of the best fluid movements that you wouldn't even see, and graphically speaking, on the Super Nintendo, which is why it's such a big deal that a retro-styled game was made for a modern era. And honestly, Shovelknight executes the movements, controls, and graphics beautifully. And this music, the main Shovelknight theme, which you can listen to right now after this, is completely amazing. It's one of the most iconic video game pieces that I've heard this year, and let me just say, from this piece alone, you will not be disappointed in the music. This is just another thing this game executes flawlessly. we talk about how great the controls are, how satisfying they are, how great the environments look, and just how fluid the game looks from the translation from the days of old to now, I must say, the story in this game is really simplistic, but it's so simplistic that it works out to its advantage. Shovelknight and his partner Shieldknight go into the Tower of Fate, a tower that ends up sealing Shieldknight inside after they discover a cursed amulet. Shovelknight, distraught over her disappearance, ends up going into a life of solitude, retired from treasure hunting. Of course, when the Enchantress, an evil woman who emerges from the Tower of Fate and recruits 8 deadly knights from throughout the land to take over the world, well, Shovelknight comes out of retirement to hopefully find out what happened to Shieldknight and of course stop the 8 evil knights known as the Order of No Quarter and the Enchantress herself. It's a pretty standard plot. It's similar to a Mario-esque thing. You go, you beat a bunch of bosses, and then you go and you save the girl at the end. This has a lot more twists to that. The knights are all unique, their environments are so great, their personalities shine through in their dialogue, which adds to the charm and humor of this game. The Enchantress herself isn't exactly the most prevalent villain in the main Shovel Knight campaign. She appears a few times, but she's not a huge deal, so I think there could have been a bit more emphasis on the Enchantress, but all in all, though, the biggest part about the Enchantress that you have to take away is the big twist involving Shieldknight, which I think is probably one of the better parts of the game as far as the Enchantress character goes. So there is a bit of story improvement that could have been there, but all in all, though, the story doesn't even have to be that much in depth. It is charming, it's humorous, and it fits the style of game brilliantly. This video, I've been showing snippets of Shovel Knight gameplay, and I would hope that from that alone you guys could see the amazingness that I've talked about thus far within the gameplay aspects, the platforming that it brings to the table, the different gear that you can utilize that you can buy from shops, the different beautiful animations from enemies in combat, and even some snippets of bosses here and there. I really hope that all that emphasizes just how amazing this game is for what it is, but for this segment, I don't really want to talk about that. We've covered music, we've covered story, we've covered all that stuff that video game tropes typically go with. But Shovel Knight, one thing it does well for an indie game like this is the side content. Oh my, I have played my fair share of indie games in my day, but Shovel Knight is one of the games that executes it so brilliantly with the side quests, whether it be the Triple King, just the humorous a trout that looks like an apple, that you can get different chalices full of power-ups, essentially. Make yourself stronger, refill your health and magic and whatnot, standard stuff. But there's also great side stuff, a haunted mausoleum, different wandering travelers that you can encounter and you can defeat in order to gain boatloads of money and weapons. And even in some cases, in the case of the Xbox One version, you can even encounter the Battletoads, classic arcade-style Super Nintendo characters from back in the day themselves. And that's not to mention on the PS4 version, you can encounter Kratos. And let me mention, in the Battletoads encounter and the Kratos encounter, you can get specialized weapons for Shovel Knight, and it works amazingly. But I have to be honest, with all of this stuff in here, with all the praise that I've given this game throughout this video, talking about everything surrounding it, what does the game do wrong? Shovel Knight does have a few downsides. Now, these are nitpicks in comparisons to everything I've said thus far in this video, but I must be honest, one of the things that well, I admit I praise Shovel Knight's controls brilliantly because they do work fantastically for combat and exploration, and it encourages you to go and explore more with the different weapons and the different power-ups you get, like the glide propeller or anything else for that matter you can gain. I will say the platforming in some levels is a bit stiff. Two major problems that I have with Shovel Knight are some of the platforming bits and then some of the level designs. The platforming bits in particular, Shovel Knight's jump works amazingly most of the time, and especially even in combat, and sometimes it can even add to an added layer of challenge if you're on higher difficulties. However, the platforming in really tight time sections of some levels, it doesn't work that well. For me personally, Treasure Knight was one stage that I found a lot of difficulty for me personally in there. Whenever you have to go on the timed rockets that go across the screen, you have to work your way up to the top like a staircase. The timing of Shovel Knight's jump arc, I think, could have been improved. He could have been a bit more lighter. He's like a weight whenever you jump in some arcs, if that makes any sense. The momentum carries over a bit too much for my liking, and that makes some of the trickier platforming sections, such as the piranha fight I mentioned earlier that looked amazing, and the underwater segment, also in Treasure Knight stage, a really big pain, because while you're running away from the giant piranha that has a giant light on its head, you have to platform over certain different platforms that show up in the water, granted. And then, that's even before the boss fight. And if you die along that way, you gotta start the whole sequence all over again. So, it's just a minor nitpick, but some areas I feel like could have been improved for Shovel Knight's like jump arc, and his platforming overall could have been improved. And some of the levels too, while we're going on about another minor critique of mine, some of the levels like Treasure Knight stage, I feel like could have been way better. They could have been much more improved. And in all honesty, I have to admit, some of the other levels, though, work brilliantly in contrast, so I'm not saying that it's all bad. Propeller Knight stage, my worst and least favorite boss fight in this entire game. The stage was amazing. The aesthetic of going around an airship, having to go with the different upward, downward, left to right currents in the jump to make sure that you avoid getting hit by spikes and flying enemies, all the while going through an actual airship is absolutely a great aesthetic, which is, again, another amazing thing about this game. But I feel like some of the stages could have been designed better to accommodate Shovel Knight's limitations with the platforming, but I can't deny, though, despite these minor nitpicks, just how great this game is. Everything that I've talked about, I don't think does the game complete justice. This, by far, is one of the best games I played this year, and while, again, it is not perfect, it is pretty damn close. All in all, Shovel Knight is a great game. I highly recommend you all check it out. It's on Xbox One, it's on PS4, it's on Switch, it's on the Wii U if you still play that for some reason. And all in all, I would highly recommend checking out this game. The DLC, I'm sure, is worth it as well, and Shovel Knight Showdown, a multiplayer Battle Royale-esque game, I would recommend checking out as well. But if we're just talking the main campaign, which I'm reviewing today, highly recommend you guys go and check it out. It is a piece of indie bliss, and it is amazing. Very great game, highly recommended. Either way, guys, this has been it for my review of Shovel Knight today. Hope you guys do enjoy this video. If you guys have your own experiences and thoughts of Shovel Knight, let me know in the comment section down below. I love having discussions with you guys about what you guys think about these games. And like I said, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, give it a like, subscribe if you want to catch more videos like this in the future, covering all sorts of games, mostly nostalgic retro games like this. And, yeah, that's all for me, guys, aside from liking, subscribing, and commenting. Next time, I think I'm going to be covering Mission Impossible on the PS1, so yeah, we'll have fun with that one. I have no idea what to expect, honestly. I've never played it. So, either way, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you later. Peace.